Hey, what's up, y'all? Well, I was talking to one of the guys from YouTube today on the phone, and he was asking me about my military experience, what I did when I was in the Navy. And I told him, and he asked me, well, what ship was you on? And I told him it was the Emory S. Land. So he looked it up, and he said, man, that was a huge ship. What did it do? That thing's bigger than a battleship. I said, yeah, it was bigger than a battleship because we had to take care of the submarines because that's the type of ship I was on. It was a subtender. What we did was any need that the submarine had, we took care of it. The ship I was on was more or less a floating city. If the sub needed a sheet metal guy, he had it. If he needed an electrician, he had it. If they needed a carpenter, for whatever reason, there ain't nothing wood on a submarine, but we had a carpenter shop, we had a installation shop, we had a nuclear weld shop. Any of the Tomahawk missiles that came from our ship, so we had gunner's mates, we had plexiglass people, we had just any kind of trade you can think of was on that ship. So we got to talking about some of the jobs I did while I was on there, and then we transitioned into, well, what happened after I got out. So I was telling some stories of what I did after I got out, and we got to talking about some of the cooler calls that I've been on and some of the weirder calls that I've been on. So I decided, well, hell, I'm going to share those stories with y'all because he thought they were kind of interesting. The very best call that I've ever been on, and I know you guys have your own stories too, because let me tell you something. You cannot be in this trade and go to all these people's houses without coming up with some cool story. I know Steve Lav shared one about the panty sniffer. Well, I got one of those stories too, but anyway, that's for another video another time. So this one call I went on, what happened was the two guys I was working for, they went to a concert at this venue in Atlanta called Chastain Park. And they ran into one of our past customers from a different company we all worked for. Now, that company had been around Atlanta for a long time. And they took care of a lot of old money in Buckhead, which is where all the old money is. That's where the governor's mansion is, and you hear these stories about the South and how the women talk, and that's the kind of place that is. It's old money Atlanta, and we took care of a lot of those people. I've been fortunate to work for companies that took care of really, really nice houses here in Atlanta. So anyway, so they're at this concert, and they go see this guy named Steve Winwood. And you older guys probably know who he is. The younger guys will have to Google him. But they went to go see Steve Winwood. Well, they ran into a past customer, and this lady come running up to one of the guys and hugged his neck and said, "Hey, Bill, I've been looking all over for you, blah, 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 blah. Got a problem." And he said, "Okay, what is it?" I forget the lady's name, but he said, "What is it?" And she said, "Well, me and Steve Winwood's wife have been friends forever, and they're staying at our house tonight after the concert. They was there last night. But the air in the master bedroom where he's staying is broken. Can you get it fixed?" So they said, "Oh, okay." So they called me up, explained the story, and I tell my wife that, hey, I got to go down to Atlanta to do a service call. I didn't tell her the story about, hey, the after party is going to be at this lady's house. Steve Winwood's going to be there, and we're more than invited to go. So she said, "What?" And then I tell her the story, and she's like, "I'm going with you." So we call my sister-in-law, tell her the story. She says, "Okay, but you got to give me an autograph." So we go get her. She come and babysit my son. We take off and go to Atlanta. We get there before the caterers get there, and I get my bearings in the house because I had been there once or twice before from that previous company. And I find a problem, and I think the compressor was bad or something. I couldn't get it going. But anyway, I wasn't leaving because the caterers just showed up, and I knew pretty soon that the party was coming. So I called the guys and explained to them that, hey, it was just dead. There's nothing we could do. So they said, "Okay, just hang around. You're invited to the party." So we did. We stayed there. We were troopers, man. The band showed up. Steve Winwood showed up. The groupies showed up. The high class people showed up. This lady's friends, and everybody was having fun. They were laughing, drinking, and then the band members fired up the marijuana, the pot, and you could smell it for miles around, and so the high class people, they leave because they didn't want to have nothing to do with the pot smoking. The alcohol was one thing, but they don't have nothing to do with the pot. So they left, and it was, at that time then, it was just me, the guys I worked for, a couple other people, the band, Steve Winwood, and some groupies. Well, the party's going on, music's playing, blah, blah, blah. And one of the groupies decides she wants to go skinny dipping. So she's like, hey, let's go skinny dipping, blah, 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 blah. And I look at my wife, she looks at me, she shakes her head, and I'm like, okay. So I take that as, hey, she said yes. So we take off our clothes, we get in the pool, we go skinny dipping, blah, blah, blah. And finally we get out. And Steve Winwood, he when he got to this party, he went out to the back deck overlooking the pool. And he stood there the whole time, didn't really ever move that I know of, because we were, mingling with people. And somebody gave him a box of cigars, Cuban cigars. And it's so after we got done skinny dipping, I got dressed and went up there. I was talking to him and asked him if I could have one of the cigars. And he said, yeah, sure. And so we stood there on the patio and we smoked cigars. And I listened to their stories. And it was a very, very entertaining night. And so when he decided he did want to leave, he went over to the piano. He's getting ready to go to bed. So he goes over to the piano and he plays a couple songs and sings and very cool night. Very cool night. Never forget it. I couldn't tell you what was wrong with the air conditioner, but I can tell you, just like it was yesterday, what happened at this party. Just a very cool night. We were actually the last ones to leave. We were the first ones to get there, and we were the last ones to leave. To be honest with you, I think one reason we couldn't leave before we did is because my wife couldn't find one of her shoes. Don't know what happened to it. We eventually found it in a flower pot, of all places. So, I'm glad that's all she lost. But it was just a shoe. We found it finally and we left. But that was the best service call I've ever been on. The weirdest service call that I've ever been on was at a nudist lady's house. And I didn't know she was a nudist until after the call was over. And so I get there, I ring the bell, she comes to the door, she's in a bathrobe, and I'm thinking, well, that's no big deal, She just get up, whatever. So she's in her bathrobe, and she said, well, the furnace is over here. I asked where the air conditioner was. She said, oh, it's over on that side of the house. And she said, just make yourself at home, go do what you got to do, and let me know when you're done. I said, okay. I go, I work on the stuff, and I come back in, and I start yelling for her. And she's answering me, and I'm like, where is she at? And then finally she says, I'm over in the bathroom. So, I follow her voice, and I'm talking to her through the door. The door was shut, and I'm talking to her through the door, and she said, just come on in. I can't understand you. And so I was like, she's like, it's okay, just come on in. And so I open the door, and I go in. This lady is in the bathtub taking a bath. And, I'm like, wow. So we talk. She's in the bathtub in all her glory, and I'm like, she's like, it's okay, I promise. She explained to me about being a nudist, and it didn't bother her, and, whatever. So here I am, I'm talking to the lady in the bathtub about her air conditioning problem, and, I don't remember anything about that call either. I just remember her being in the bathtub. And wow. So that was the weirdest one I've ever been on. But the one thing that these calls have taught me is that when you go to people's houses, it doesn't matter the size of the house. It doesn't matter, how much money they have, how much money they don't have. People are people. And the one thing that I think that people have to get over with going to people's houses is what the inside of their house looks like. It could be the most cleanest house in the world, and they could have weird living circumstances or weird living choices, is a better word, and something you just don't. It just freaks you out. I've been to people's houses, they would not let me in the front door, and I'm trying to explain to them it don't matter. You know, I've been to houses that had 200 cats at their house, and you know that lady would definitely not let me in her house. Thank God her stuff is in a crawl space, and I never did have to go into her crawl space, fortunately. She always had like run cap calls or something like that. I thought I'd share those couple of stories with y'all. That's my best one and my weirdest one. And it's funny how both those calls involve somebody being naked. You want to share yours in the comments? You know, that'd be cool. Hope you enjoyed it. You know, we'll just see you on the next one. See ya.